town of the good, the bad, and the weird. You either live by the gun, or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris. And today, I brought special drinks.
Ooh.
ASMR noises.
I've never done that stuff.
Alright, so I have a bad habit of going into grocery stores that I can't afford and pretending like I'm a rich, fancy person who can buy shit from there. So would you like ginger ale or cream soda from a brand I've never tried before?
Oh, let's do ginger ale.
There you are. Please note the date from whence it came.
Ooh, 1869. Jesus.
And that's the whole reason I picked up this brand.
Lovely. I mean, fitting for what we're about to talk about.
That's kind of what I was thinking as well.
Well, so getting into it, since summer's coming up, we thought it would be, with the heat rising and people going to the beach, we thought we'd pick a steamy episode. Something, something for the family.
Oh yeah, definitely a family fit.
So, not what you were thinking. We are going to the Wild Wild West for steampunk.
Yes. I am probably one of the only people in the entire world who actually genuinely likes this movie. I know I'm alone in this. I watched so many people review it this week to confirm my suspicions and beliefs that it is in fact a horrible movie. One might say bad.
I mean, it's bad. It's bad, but it's enjoyably bad at times.
It is incredibly bad. So, where to start off with? I guess the basic premise of the show, which was what everyone knew before they went to go see it when it originally came out.
Which I didn't know about until doing some research.
I am a little sad that I couldn't get a hold of actual episodes from what was the original Wild Wild West, the TV show.
Which I found out had 2 movies.
It did. I completely intend to watch it at some point. It sounds pretty cool. The clips I saw look pretty badass. And the whole premise of it was there's two main characters, just like in the current movie, right?
Yep.
And one of them is kind of a Bond-esque character, and the other one is, I believe, into gadgets and costumes and that part of the Bond character. Now, you're currently watching all the Bond movies.
Yes, I am.
Tell me, does Wild Wild West strike you as a Bond character? Or at least the new one.
Well, Will Smith kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
His buddy is more like the nerds who supply him with the gadgets.
Yeah, definitely got some mad scientist vibes.
Yeah, we just got to Goldfinger, so now we're starting to get into gadgets.
The gadgets are the best part. The other thing that everyone knew about it was who was going to be in the movie. There's a lot of big names in this movie.
Well, that was the director's intent. He wanted to cast Will Smith, 1, because he'd worked with him before, and 2, to show that this was a big movie.
And they had the last success Tim and Will Smith had was, I think, Men in Black.
Yes,
Men
in Black was a couple years before this.
Huge success. And arguably similar characters, just not in the West.
Well, I'd say similar kind of comedy and style, because the director, Barry Sonnenfeld, he actually directed the Addams Family movies.
He did. I loved Addams Family movies.
I know you do.
Still love the Addams Family movies. Goal is to be Wednesday one day. But, so we had the big name actors. We had a producer and director who was very well known and liked at the time. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that was very well known at the time was the music. With the exception of the song Wild Wild West, I think, all of the music was done by Elmer Bernstein, who is a very prolific music conductor and writer. Did a bunch of stuff, one of which I think he did Jaws. I mean, if it's in a movie, I feel like at some point he did it. What all? He's done 150 movies, including Ghostbusters. He did the original Magnificent Seven, or I believe the original Magnificent Seven. He is not related to the other Bernstein, or Bernstein. I know they pronounce it a little differently, but they were good friends, so, you know, he was very well known. And then I don't know if this was the same for you, because I don't know where you lived at the time this movie came out.
I was still in Alaska.
Did Alaska constantly play the song Wild Wild West by Will Smith?
See, I don't really remember the radio because my parents used to listen to a lot of cassettes, and even if they did, my parents listened to a lot of classic rock, so it never would have come up.
Somehow that makes a lot of sense.
Now, what I do remember is the toys. I can't remember if it was Burger King or Taco Bell.
It was Burger King.
It was Burger King, okay.
Yep. Burger King had them all. Giant spider, the train, a horse.
See, I don't remember it. I just remember there were toys, and that was about the same time that Godzilla movie came out, and right before we moved to Germany, like a year or so later, so.
Yeah. So going into it, a lot of people had really high hopes. The production was, it wasn't small budget by any means. It looked pretty good on the commercials. I remember the music, the song Wild Wild West, while I know it gets a lot of hate nowadays, it was played nonstop on the radio, it felt like, and a lot of people liked it. I'll give it, it's catchy.
Yeah, I mean, this is like my second time ever actually watching the movie. And the music videos popped up every now and then. I own,
this is how much I like this horrible garbage piece of a movie. I own the original VHS cassette. And there is not one but two music videos at the end of that, right after the credits.
Oh God!
And so I have the privilege of being able to watch that whenever my little heart desires, which is not very often. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah,
but it is there, and they were very proud of it at the time.
Well, like tracking down a DVD for myself was actually a little bit harder. I had to go to a couple stores to find one, and even then, like on Amazon, you can rent it. And you know it's a quality film when you can rent it for 99 cents.
Oh, that's how you know it's the best type.
The only type, the 99 cents video section of Amazon.
Yes. So, we're set up before we even go into the film with these pretty high expectations. We're looking good, and then we are hit with the first scene of the movie, which is Will Smith and a lady friend who I don't even think gets a name.
No,
in a water tower.
I think her title is The Woman, which, fun fact, she was topless in that scene.
Good for her.
Yeah, this is a PG-13 movie.
And it is only PG-13 because I assume they thought 13-year-olds wouldn't catch innuendo jokes.
Oh,
I guarantee you we did. It was great. I think that's probably why I liked it, is the nostalgia of being able to giggle about penis jokes the entire movie.
Well, my question in regards to that is, what the hell kind of water tank was that? Did you...
Oh, I have a lot of questions about the water tank and the sanitariness of that water tank.
Who decides, I'm going to be a bounty hunter, I'm going to hide out in this water tank for, what did he say, a couple weeks or something?
I feel like he'd be pruny by that point. I hope he got out.
How do you not notice a man crawling in and out of your water tower?
Well, the other thing that was killing me is, as a true crime fanatic, water towers don't strike me as a very safe place to hide. There's a couple of famous instances of death in water towers.
Lisa Lamb.
Yes. And I'm sure, you know, the standards of water tower building have changed over the fake years that this movie's based off of. But still, like, there was a whole table set up in there. They had food, wine, candles, the whole 9 yards. I hope nobody drank this water ever.
Well, I mean...
I hope this water was specifically for putting out fires, and that's it.
You know it wasn't.
No, I'm sure it wasn't.
Well, we can actually kind of date where this movie's at, roughly. Because the and this is later on, the summit that the president's going to is actually from 1869.
Perfect.
The only thing that's out of order is some of the other stuff that happens after, but we can go on that later. It's steampunk revisionist history. Which,
I mean, part of the reason I think a lot of people did enjoy at least portions of this movie was because of how heavy it hit with steampunk. This was kind of a huge wave of just full acceptance and throwing into the like front spotlight of steampunk, and not just like sprinkled here or here like we'd seen it, but just full force, all steampunk all the time.
Well, even then, I don't really fully agree with that. I mean, I think it has elements of it, but
Definitely.
it's difficult for me when I started looking into steampunk, because I don't know a whole lot about it. I started looking up like definitions, and there's a lot back and forth about it.
Steampunk is one of the most recognizably undescribable trends in subculture.
So what I was able to come up with, and a definition that works for me as kind of a standard, is that steampunk is a work of media that embodies the spirit or appearance of the age of steam, either set it in the age of steam with advanced technological power through steam or gears and springs, or a future that has retrofit technologies run by steam heavily. True.
And I think part of the reason this one, a lot of people went ahead and threw in with the steam, was because of the gears, because of the steam-powered locomotives, even though it's missing a lot of the elements that a lot of people would contemporarily say disqualifies it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is steampunk is a derivative of the cyberpunk movement, which...
Yes.
Cyberpunk was a combination of high-tech, low-life. And that's why I think steampunk... I know it's a tongue-in-cheek play on the word, but it doesn't necessarily fit everything.
No, and I looked into it more because I like the style and I've always admired it, but I am not a crafty enough person to throw myself into it by any means. There's so many sub-categories that are kind of defined, and then some that are just really loosely defined, and then a couple that I'm not even sure were real, like lobster punk. I don't know what that is. I didn't bother to Google it.
Who knows?
But it came up in my research. So where does this actually fit under that umbrella of punk? Arguably a lot of places.
Well, it fits under Western steampunk.
Yes, which we mostly saw via the main character's friend, who I'm not gonna lie, I know everyone has names, but again, as I've already said, you are given a nickname at the start of the movie, and that is who you are. So the Fresh Prince's best friend, who I'm calling the Doctor, even though I have no proof he has a doctorate.
Artemis Gordon.
Him. He's kind of the embodiment of the technology side of this movie, which kind of bums me out because he was the part of the movie that was interesting to watch.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing about it, and why, I have a hard time with defining this movie as steampunk, just because it feels like it's at the cusp of it.
It's there, but not.
Yeah, but that's also the thing about steampunk, is that the way it deals with technology is it's kind of the birth and the growth of the human through human society through technology.
Yes. One of the things that I think they did do right as far as steampunk is they took existing objects and things and threw on extra technology that it could do, even though realistically that's not how it would work.
And it wasn't just gears being thrown on
for aesthetic purposes.
Yeah.
No, like extra buttons, things moving and doing things that normally they, as springs and cables, could not actually accomplish, which was really cool, and I liked that. Like, example being, he's got a notepad and pen attached to a spring-loaded system in his hand, or in his sleeves. That felt right to me. That felt good. One of the things that I don't know how much you noticed, but as someone who really loves steampunk movies, I was tickled to see the big wheel bicycle motorcycle hybrid. It's a trend that shows up a lot in the genre, and every time it shows up, I'm just tickled pink.
It's a hipster genre.
It is very much a hipster genre, but also not.
Yeah, I mean, it's retrofitting, which is what we mainly come across in, especially like futuristic steampunk movies.
Yes, very much so. The other thing that this movie tried to do on top of being a steampunk movie was also try to be a Western movie. I also love Western movies.
This movie is definitely not a Western film.
No, it's missing a lot of the
tropes,
just vibrato of a Western.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain swagger that was completely missing.
Well, it's not a Western movie. It just takes place in the West.
True, But also it doesn't, because it also takes place in the South.
And the city, or DC as it's being built, which, by the way, those were filmed in California, all the DC shots.
Beautiful.
Outdoor DC shots, at least.
I mean, I'm sure it was too expensive to fly all of the giant spiders and stuff to DC for actual filming.
Yes. So
it fails kind of as a steampunk. It pretty much fails as a Western, which puts it in this weird category. So
it's kind of like a half-hearted attempt.
Yes. The other thing that we get out of it is, so we've got the two main characters who, on their own, fantastic. Once, for some reason, they came together, the energy, the lines just never jive together, and then we get the bad guy.
Loveless,
who
is
now,
loveless.
Yes. He's missing the lower half of himself.
Which...
all of the lower half of himself. And the amount of puns that this man produces is gold.
Yeah, so Loveless, he is obsessed with spiders. The director said he has leg envy.
See, that's not what I heard. I heard that someone, and I don't remember who because I wasn't paying that much attention, already had the spider from the ending and the spider trope and required that it was part of the movie. And that's why the spiders are there.
Okay, well...
And I believe the spiders were left over from the failed attempt of a Spider-Man movie starring Nicolas Cage.
That was Superman.
Superman? There's no spiders.
There's test footage.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't truly know where the spiders came from.
Well, I have...
Both are probable.
Yeah, well, mine's from the director himself, so who knows. But, so, Loveless, as he describes, he lost a lung, spleen, bladder, legs, 35 feet of small intestine, and all reproductive organs. Now, the thing that got me, 35 feet of small intestine's a lot.
It is a lot.
I checked with some of my people I know in the medical world.
Your medical contacts?
Yeah, my dad, my brother, and my friend's girlfriend. Because I looked this up from what I found, the human has between 20 to 23 feet of small intestine.
So he either had more beginning or the math is confusing to me.
Or he's just a southern exaggeration.
Maybe. I don't know which is correct, but I will say there wasn't a lot left of him. It's really amazing that he's alive at all, to be honest with you.
I want to know how he functions.
I have no idea, but I will say that he felt very similar to the trope of a brain in a jar. Or, kind of that cyborg-esque vibe. The only problem, I guess not problem, but difference was they only showed him using the steam-powered electric wheelchair. And I use electric loosely, but that's pretty much what it was just a modern electric wheelchair with steam power on the back. Yeah. But going into all of that, we have to assume that this wheelchair is also operating his lungs, his gut, and...
Well, I mean, he still has his diaphragm, so he'd still be able to breathe at least, but everything after that...
just missing, gone. So I'm assuming this wheelchair does a lot of multitasking, but we didn't really see any of that, which is a little disappointing, but also fun for you to imagine, I suppose.
Well, the wheelchair was actually what I thought was one of the coolest effects, because they used a modified electric wheelchair, and the studio who did the special effects for this, Industrial Light and Sound.
Yes.
Best known for Star Wars.
They did a really good job with the special effects. Visually, the movie looks phenomenal. It's the writing where we had some problems.
CGI's aged a little bit, but...
A little bit. If you watch it on the old VHS tape, it still looks great.
All the grainy glory.
The other thing, now that I rewatched it, the fun drinking game you can play is drink every time you see a spider or a spider web on the screen.
No, they're everywhere.
You might die.
I would die.
I'd
die in the very first... just when you meet him.
Yes, they're everywhere, but they're also... Once you know to look for them, they're everywhere and they're a little obnoxious, but watching it without realizing that there are spider things. My husband made it through most of the movie without realizing there were spiders everywhere.
I don't, but at the same time, like, we, through our schooling, look for that kind of stuff. We look for motifs in architecture. And...
Yes. It was also an interesting choice writing-wise, and I doubt that this plays off of the original content whatsoever. But for this movie to have picked the overall setting of the South was kind of an interesting choice, given that the main character definitely doesn't fit in the South, and they make a lot of references and jokes and puns off of it, and then also don't really address it as a problem until Will Smith is just rude and hits the lady's boobs.
Which, apparently, that lady was a good sport about it. They did like 20 takes of that.
I mean, you can put that on your resume. Will Smith hit my boobs 20 times. I did not hit him. It's... So, they hint at this being a problem. They address the fact that the actor's skin color would not mesh with the time period and the location, and then continue on like everything's fine.
But I mean, it was a diverse cast. Like, they brought like
Yes.
the Loveless ladies,
Which I don't really understand. The Loveless ladies, to be honest with you.
They're there for the TNA.
They were beautiful. They were kind of fun to watch. I'm not sure why they're all in their underwear. I'm also not sure why they're Russian, I think.
What? No, one of them's Norwegian, and I
Okay.
think the other one's from like Ukraine or something.
Okay, so not from the South or any part of America, and it's just kind of like, yes, they are here.
Well, I can answer your costume question.
I have many.
The costume designer stated their costumes were all about the cleavage.
Not wrong. I'll accept that as an answer.
Yes.
Good enough.
Leg envy. That's why they're in their underwear, so he can look at their legs.
This makes sense. Okay, that makes sense to me. I just kind of wish we had more directly addressed the random ladies from other countries present in this movie. We do briefly get a third or fourth character, I should say, of a young lady pretending to look for her father throughout the whole film, and she's introduced as a love interest who then is not a love interest at all, and I kind of liked it.
Yeah. No, she's just using them. I the scene when they're leaving the train and she throws off the robe and exposes her body.
And I will say that while it was completely stupid and unnecessary, the pajama joke does make me laugh every single time.
That was her real butt.
It was real butt.
It was her real butt.
And
it wasn't a butt double.
I appreciate the real butt that she put out for the whole world to be able to see if they so choose to watch this movie again.
You don't really get to see the butt, though.
It's not a lot of butt, but I do find that part funny, even though there's no reason for it whatsoever. Also, the thing that was killing me is they tell her at that scene that, oh, you know, you can wear my clothes, when they literally have a drag queen's wardrobe in the back. Surely we could have found her something a little bit more appropriate to wear.
Artemis is a bit too into that.
He's very committed to his costume gang.
Well, and nothing wrong with cross-dressing or anything like that. It's just like it goes beyond his work, which he he puts it out there like, I do this for my job.
Well, and the part that really was killing me was he clearly prides himself in his costuming, but we only ever see him attempt to pretend to be another actual person once, and it's just so that we can have a running gag of him acting as the president, so that we didn't have to hire another person to be the president.
Which was great.
I liked it, but I kind of would have liked to see him pretend to be another recognizable person to show off that he's not just having his side hobby also cross over into work, because his president gig is leading to the fact that, like, maybe he can Sherlock Holmes his way into stuff with his costumes.
it also kind of seems like his job, since he's kind of a secret agent for the president.
The secret agent part of the movie is very briefly glossed over. They just kind of you're just kind of told, yes, they are secret agents, and you're to accept this. They are gunslinging secret agents. Don't worry about it.
No, they're not even secret agents. They're just hired men.
They are hired men who eventually get badges that look a lot like sheriff badges.
They were the Secret Service.
Secret Service.
Which, that was the one thing about the timeline that's out of place. The summit was in 1869. Secret Service was founded about a few years earlier in 1865.
And on top of that, I think we've probably always had some form of protection for the president. Maybe not at the very beginning, but to enough of an extent that I don't think we needed to create fake Western Secret Service men. But you know what? Whatever. That's not the worst offense this movie has.
No.
So I'll be okay with it if that's what it takes. The other point that was a little, and I don't know if you caught this as a fellow architect. Did you catch the part where they go to Lovelace's main bad guy headquarters? It looks strikingly like the Glass Castle.
The Crystal Palace?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely caught that.
Which I actually kind of thought was appropriate, seeing the time period and the World's Fair's popularity during that time period.
Yes.
And so I thought that was kind of a clever gist, and then we completely lose it.
Yeah, that was the thing is, when, like, you barely see it when the tarantula is first introduced. Yes. And then you don't see it again until they're taken back to the palace. And you, like, it's this weird jump where you think, okay, this is the inside of the spider.
Yeah, it's a little off-putting. I would have really appreciated a little bit more grounding as to where we were, because we got a pretty good grounding of the train, which is the other main set for the movie. Granted, we didn't get a ton of the train, but you did get kind of a general layout with the amount of time we spent there. You had the main parlor room, there was clearly a washroom, closet, and then the rest of it. Also, God bless that train driver. The most patient man ever. But also, he just kind of accepts the fact that other people are now in charge of this train.
Yeah, well like, the palace, I think, is a very fitting palace for him, because it's very spiderweb-like. You have the iron structure and the glass.
It also kind of resembles like a terrarium in a way, where you would put spider in said terrarium.
Yeah.
And it also kind of represents the whole idea, back to the steampunk theme of the movie, of, you know, the revolutionary technology that went into that building. The original building. Which was completely groundbreaking at the time. Which is kind of the idea of some parts of Steam. So it fits. I liked it. And then we lose it to Will Smith's fake titties.
That was... At least when you see Artemis...
It's not a good disguise.
No.
But Will Smith's is worse.
Yeah, he can move his hips.
Yes, he can. I will give him credit that he has potential in taking some belly dancing classes if he ever wanted to.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, like, one, why does Artemis have that? He clearly doesn't have the body type, at least.
I also don't think he has the personality disposition. Even when he's pretending to be other people, he always picks a little bit more reserved character to play. And Showgirl is not one of them.
No. Well, I mean, he comes in as a showgirl.
He does, who then immediately rejects every single person who comes up to talk to him and doesn't even pretend to flatter or, you know, flirt with anyone in the room. So he's kind of dressed up for nothing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he needed to go any further, but, you know, a little flirt here and there would have made the character seem more real.
Yeah, and I think they could have easily done it as just, like, he could have moved in as, like, a henchman or something.
Yes, or even a waitress.
Yeah, just an inconspicuous person. He shows up to the party as like a freaking beaver trapper in the South.
Yeah, that was hilarious to me. I know a lot of people hate that scene because of how obvious it is, but I don't know. My humor is not that highbrow, I guess.
I have no clue. I don't know. Well, that's the thing is, like, for me, there was too much comedy in this movie.
There was a lot of bits that had been written separately, it felt like, that were then webbed together with the rest of the story. And then there was other parts that I really felt like maybe the actors were kind of just going for it, trying to come up with what they could in the moment. But also, I give them a lot more credit than that. I think they can do better normally. So I don't know.
Yeah, and one of the things the director was talking about is like the thing I remember specifically about the humor is the scene where he pulls out the scientist's head and uses it as a projector. Yes, which I was actually really cool with that scene. I would have liked to see more stuff like that, but I understand PG-13. PG-13, well, but I did like the fact that whoever wrote that scene definitely had some background knowledge, because there was a genuine thought at one point in history. Whether or not that lines up with this timeline is very questionable, but that was a thought that, you know, the last thing you saw was imprinted onto your retina. Is the image that clear? No, at no point were they ever convinced that it was like a white blur, and like you were hoping that was the thing. He was wearing glasses, that's right, because they had to put his glasses on to correct it. Yes. Well, the bit about the comedy is and that scene specifically, the director has Will Smith say, "That's a human head." Not 3 times, 4 times to break the rule. Yeah, which the first time was a good segue to really imprint that this is, for them, a real person's head and not a prop. The second time is a little bit funny. The third time felt unnecessary, and the fourth time you're like, yes, we know we're also catching on fire. Calm down. Yeah, no, and I mean, I know my humor is more on the dry side, but even then, I mean, I can tell when things are trying to be funny. There was just way too much comedy. And that's the thing with a comedy film, it needs to be balanced. Yeah. There also, the point in the movie where we attempt to break the comedy with the intense situation that the main characters need to get out of is the weird dog collar cones plus magnetic frisbee of death, which is probably the most advanced, or one of the most advanced technologies in that movie. I had verbal questions while watching the movie on how the thing flew, and my husband's answers was magic magnets. Well, I can tell you that the Steely Dan wannabe was actually a practical effect. Okay. It did launch a blade. But that's impressive. 1 foot. Hey. That's farther than I thought it was gonna go. The overall design of the collars did feel thought through to me. Because it did have the funnel shape to kind of guide the blade. The thing that always struck me as odd is the blade clearly flies at a certain height. That's why we've got the funnel, that's why it launches at a certain height. Could we not just sit down? If we waited till it's closer and then sit down, would it not miss and then we could go about our day? No, because we do see them fly up in the air and circle back down. Remember when they cross and then jump? This is true. That's why it comes back around. This is true, but then that brings into the idea that this isn't just running off of a magnetic field running at a plane. It has some type of actual piloting abilities. A pigeon. A pigeon would be a very confused pigeon. Very dizzy pigeon. I also kind of like the idea of Loveless sitting up in his spider with like a little remote control, like tee-hee-hing to himself while attempting to fly it. Because you know no one's gonna actually just sit there. They've got a fence that's like thigh high. Yeah. No, not even thigh high, like ankle high. Ankle high, 4x4 looking-ish fence for them to just kind of stand in and hope for the best. And then
Clearly they didn't, because that's what they decided the characters would do, as opposed to having grown it all during the movie and, worked together to solve this. But we do get to see them jump off a cliff, which was enjoyable.
Yes. Which, another matte painting.
Beautiful.
But, I mean, going back, I mean, the effects were good. They felt thought out. Like,
They did feel thought out. Even the spider, which I think the spider is what aged the worst throughout this movie.
Oh, yeah.
But even the spider, the sound effects of it walking is the sound of the cables bending and snapping.
Mm-hmm.
And that made it feel more thought out than as it had just, like, stomped across the ground.
Well, they had also talked about at one point of what if they built a spider that big.
This is true.
They did build one leg, which you see in the scene of Will Smith climbing it.
Okay.
It weighed 10,000 pounds.
Yeah, it's a lot of steel. And steel is heavy.
Oh, yeah. No, but can you imagine if they had actually built that thing?
It would have been a permanent attraction for some amusement park, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. No, I would have been... I'd be down to see that.
Yes. The part of the spider was... Like, the spider was odd, but not too odd because of the whole tying it in with the little motifs here and there. The part of the spider that was confusing was the pit of henchmen that we have to just throw people into.
And that's one thing that I was a little bit annoyed with, too, is the henchmen that they have in it. Like, especially the fight scene towards the end where they've got iron spikes through their heads and, like, steel-plated heads.
I had a thought about the spike guy. I don't wonder if he wasn't supposed to be a reference to Phineas Gage, the poor gentleman who did actually have a spike going through his head at one point.
I highly doubt that.
He would have been roughly the right time period, and it kind of felt like they Googled all of the pertinent things for the time period and then just kind of shoved them in there.
Well, my thing was, I kind of wish that they had incorporated that more into the movie itself.
You did lose the time period a little bit throughout the film.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even then, like, because steampunk is that way more advanced technology than they should have, an army of these metal men, or steam-powered metal, maybe not steam-powered, but metal men. Which
would have been very interesting. The fight was also weird because the movie is portrayed and set up and advertised as this, these two actors coming together to create this beautiful movie, and yet we spend most of our time watching Will Smith kick ass. Not that I'm saying he did a bad job kicking ass, but it was a little weirdly balanced to not have any emphasis on this other technology that we spent so much of the movie building up to.
Yeah, and that's the thing is... The characters, in any movie where you have more than one main character, there's always going to be one who's the more main character, and that's Will Smith. He's the big star. He's the big money.
Which is fine, but we didn't even address all of the gadgets his friend could have put on him or given him to then have them tag team this fight, or even just bring about a sense that the technology in this movie is actually good, or could use good.
Well, and that's the thing, is it's... I mean, a lot of movies have similar plots. It's a buddy-buddy film about two guys who are different, that they have to come together and use each other's methods. It's just disappointing how it comes to an effect, because Will Smith just cross-dresses and accidentally stumbles into it, where Artemis actually has to take action and
try.
Fight.
Yeah. It was also kind of an odd trope, because by the end of the movie, yes, we do get the giant spider for national defense, which I feel like that maybe we need a sequel with all the worlds having giant spiders, and then we could do a giant spider film. That'd be kind of cool. I'd be down for a giant robot spider film. Just none of the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Just the giant spider fighting other giant creatures.
I mean, I really like the world it's set up. Like, I'm interested in it, but it just...
It was weird, though, because you got to the end of the movie, and with the exception of the doc professor character, who did his best to try and incorporate this new future-esque retrofitted technology into his everyday, it was pretty quickly dismissed that this technology wasn't needed, guns were better, and that, yeah, cross-dressing was the way to go, and that's kind of it. Whereas it felt like mixed messages, because we clearly want the spider. The spider's clearly very dangerous and cool. The neck collars are very dangerous and arguably kind of cool. And yet none of our new technology was ever really used on the side of good.
Yeah, and that's the thing about steampunk is getting that happy medium.
Yeah.
Because in trying to understand steampunk, I watched Steam Boy.
Good movie.
Both versions of Metropolis.
A classic.
1927, 2001. Memories, which I know you haven't seen.
I have not. I meant to.
There was only like one really steampunk bit, and then I watched an H.G. Wells, who was one of the precursors to steampunk, and that is Things to Come.
Yes, and I watched the Disney side of the list. I watched Atlantis. I watched Around the World with 80 Days, the one with Jackie Chan, obviously.
I have not seen that.
Oh, it's great. I watched Treasure Planet, and I also watched Howl's Moving Castle, and arguably Treasure Planet is probably the most heavy-handed out of that list, but as I was going through them, you could kind of do this long checklist of the Disney films who Disney clearly likes this idea and this trope, and yet the ones that they put out there that have it, for some reason, either just due to timing or, I don't know, just the lull in the activity of the group, they don't ever seem to hit quite as hard. Atlantis and Treasure Planet arguably have incredibly heavy followings, but they're nowhere near the forefront of the Disney frontier. Yeah. And it was kind of sad to see that, because the trope of Wild Wild West I love. The world was pretty damn cool. The technology was pretty damn cool. Mm-hmm. And yet, it flopped horribly. Yeah,
well, in comparing, just basics of Steam Boy compared to Wild Wild West, because for me, Steam Boy is, the peak of the world of Steam.
Yes.
Which is, visually, it's fantastic. The story is interesting. The characters kind of suck.
Yeah.
They're not super intriguing. The main character is just this boring boy who's kind of caught in between. He doesn't really have that kind of shining moment. All this stuff just keeps happening around him.
Yeah.
But then you go to something like Metropolis, which I will say the original Metropolis is not steampunk. It's not even proto-steampunk in my opinion, because that movie came out in 1927.
Yes.
That movie was a futurist film, because that was the main technology around the time. Most housing wasn't lit until the late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah. And you
lit by electricity.
Yes, but you can definitely see how it kind of grandfathered the rest of the ideas. And it felt like this movie attempted to take a lot of those ideas, put them in a bag, and shook it, and unfortunately those ideas settled at the bottom of the bag.
Yeah, and that's the thing with a lot of these alternate world movies, is that they can't really... You either have to go all in, or it doesn't work.
Yes, and it is unfortunate that we haven't quite gotten the overarching world of this sort of genre yet. But I think eventually we'll get there. Wild Wild West is not it, but eventually we'll get there.
Well, and I think we've actually seen that more in other media outside of it.
Yes, definitely.
Specifically video games.
Video games have definitely been hitting it hard. In fact, I was pulling a couple off of the shelf that I hadn't really even considered, but definitely have the tropes and makings of it.
One that I kind of forgot a little bit about, Dishonored.
Yeah. I've been playing Ni no Kuni 1, hits it really heavy, but in a completely different setting and, fantasy world time set, but it still works and the tropes still feel genuine.
Or like BioShock Infinite.
Yes, which was incredibly popular, if I remember right.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great game. I thought it was just a bit short, but...
can't have everything.
It still was cool. You had these mechanized founding fathers that had Gatling guns.
So the idea is definitely there. The love for the genre is definitely there. Did Wild Wild West hit it?
No.
No.
I completely understand why people don't like this movie. One, too much comedy.
And not even just comedy, but too much of either the same running gag joke or one-liners being passed back and forth, as opposed to developing a comedy scene.
Yeah. And even then, like we've said, the world's cool. The story is a little lackluster.
Yeah, and the overarching idea, which I believe the original gentleman who came up with the idea for the two characters from the 1997 TV show, I think he sued Warner Brothers over these characters because they are very original ideas, having a James Bond Western sort of character.
His name's James West.
James West. Like, yeah, he's definitely taking from the James Bond franchise, but the idea was spun originally enough, and the TV show was definitely separated enough that I think he sued. I think he might have died before the suit was settled.
Oh.
But from what I read, I think Warner Brother did give his family quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we've seen that before too. Lebbeus Woods sued the producers and director of 12 Monkeys.
yes.
Specifically for one scene, and I know they settled out of court, but it's very clearly that they stole from his work.
And the characters that he came up with and the characters that are portrayed in this movie, you can definitely feel how they would have worked better in a more franchise sort of way, like the James Bond movies or the TV show did, where it's a bunch of smaller stories all in this world, as opposed to one big blockbuster hit that just encompasses all of it.
And I think that's what they were going for, especially with the way it ended with them walking into the sunset on the giant spider.
A little bit. It also just kind of felt a little bit like, hey, what's a Western trope to end a movie? Sunset walking.
Walking into a sunset. And, I mean,
It at least ended the movie without having huge unanswered questions that were just going to drive you mad at the end.
It's kind of like the end of Star Wars. They get their awards for blowing up the Death Star. And that's it.
That's it. Which is fine. Would I like to see bits of this movie come back as like a franchise? Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But as a whole, as this embodiment, what score are you going to give it?
I wouldn't recommend watching it on your own. Watch it with friends and a few drinks.
Definitely a good drinking game movie. I am a bad movie connoisseur. I love them. I watch them regularly. This is one of the ones where if people want to watch a bad movie, this is a good contender for bad movie just in general. But again, by yourself, just for the enjoyment of the movie, no. It's not worth it.
No. I mean, yeah, it's tough to even really recommend this movie.
It is, but you know what? We made it through it, and now you know about steampunk.
I made it through it twice, and the director, his commentary is so boring.
Aww.
And it's not just it's not like the facts and stuff. It's kind of the way he talks. He sounds like one of those New York deli guys.
Yes.
Yeah. But
now you know, and now you guys don't have to watch it if you don't want to.
Yep. Well, this has been The Good and the Bad and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.